Welcome to another episode of Fill in the Blank. I'm here with the crew. We got Gabe.
What's up?
Evan. And we have Corey.
Evan doesn't exist.
You hit me up with my name right when coffee was sliding over
Everyone
my
is ingesting coffee for what we're about to describe as the only thing known to mankind as the Yeti. What comes to your mind when I say the Yeti?
Scooby-Doo. Yeah, that's literally
Actually,
it.
it's what I think of a little bit. Yeah.
Good.
Or the Abominable Snowman.
Yeah, that's what I.
So in folklore of Nepal, the Yeti, or Abominable Snowman, is an ape-like creature taller than an average human that is said to inhabit the Himalayan and Siberian regions of East Asia. The names Yeti and Meh-Teh are commonly used by people indigenous to the region and are part of their history and mythology. Stories of the Yeti first emerged as a facet of a Western popular culture in the 19th century. The scientific community has generally regarded the Yeti as a legend, given the lack of evidence of his existence. In one genetic study, researchers matched DNA from hair samples found in the Himalaya with the prehistoric bear from the Pleistocene epoch. So the Nepalese believe that the Yeti sighting are rare because he is known to be believed to be nocturnal.
See, that's another, because when I hear Yeti, I think either, like, Scooby-Doo, spooky, or I think of, like...
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
No, like, ancient guardian of the sacred mountains Yeti. Like, spiritual shit.
Like someone that is
like
known
it's
as...
guarding something?
The Mummy 3?
Like you look at a forest...
Don't bring that movie up.
Like if you look at a forest and you see the forest as like something that protects the forest, you can think of Bigfoot as a protector of the forest.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
And that's... Bigfoot's in North American folklore. But then if you look at East Asia, they have the same type of folklore, but it's since they're in like a mountain area, they see the Yeti as the protector of the mountains or a type of spiritual force that is known to make sure like bad events don't happen, like people aren't destroying. Like if a couple kids go start trying to like break a bunch of branches and just torture animals out there, the Yeti's gonna come out and smash their head in with a rock, like the beef jerky commercial.
Yeah.
You also said Pleistocene or whatever. That's just like the Megatherium. Wasn't that in the same time? Like time...
The Pleistocene era, yeah.
Cool.
Me and Corey are using a preference podcast, so now I have to put this one behind that one to try and remember. Okay.
The big old sloth. It lived in the same time period
Exactly,
as a large
Well,
Yeti.
that's what they linked it up to, was that the Abominable Snowman, or what someone might have saw as the Abominable Snowman, for evidence, since it's so lack of evidence, that it might have been either some dude hopped up on peyote, or some guy that saw a type of bear-type, prehistoric-type creature that might have existed in the last glacial period.
Like
that's the Pleistocene, guys, is the last glacial period.
Like a Tyrannosaurus-sized sloth.
Yeah.
So a lot of people use these stories of the Yeti to actually scare their kids, also describing that the Yeti can kill a man with a single punch.
I wouldn't doubt that, honestly.
Yeah,
Falcon
dude,
punch!
a gorilla.
Just-
A gorilla is like about our size, and they have the strength to just are not
Absolutely.
orangutans. Can rip our arms
See,
off.
Yeah.
the word punch,
Like
that's such a human thing. Like
humans can kill somebody
you
with
don't
one
think
punch.
you don't think of a
Yeah,
gorilla
right there.
like punching. You think of a gorilla like slapping. You don't think of it like poof, like fucking
Yeah, but you
winding
also
up
have to
for a
think
punch.
what we consider a punch is straightforward, whereas they can just go like that and just fucking
like
crush
punch-
your
A
entire
hammer
spine.
fist?
yeah,
Oh
basically.
my god.
Punch so like
Ugh.
humanizes the Yeti.
All right, I got a good one. Ready? A UFC fight between Bigfoot and the Yeti. Who's gonna win? I go Bigfoot.
I don't know. I think
I
I might
just
go
see
Yeti.
Bigfoot coming up with like a freaking crane
Comes in like
kick,
Spartan kicks
like a
him.
crane kick from Karate Kid, like with the arms up and just clap, and then the freaking Abominable Snowman just flies back.
I'm thinking the opposite, because the Yeti's more associated with like the Asian culture. I'm thinking more
He has a
the
katana.
Yeti knows more karate than Bigfoot. Bigfoot.
I think Bigfoot
Fill
would
in
be
the blank
more
has
brute
now become
strength.
racist because Evan using the
It's
stereotypical
racist.
Asian knowing all
Did
karate.
you hear what I said? I said Yeti comes out with a fucking katana.
Well, you said
Yeah, an Asian protector of the sacred mountains. Yeah, he probably knows karate, bro.
You think an American guardian of the forest, also known as Bigfoot, would lose to an Asian protector of the mountains?
yes.
he
I'm
comes
thinking
in
with-
with,
with
he
a proper
comes in with an
katana.
American
If
bandana.
you clarify Bigfoot and the Yeti with those distinct names or legends like that, they make them so much more badass than what they already are.
Cause now all I just picture is like like Bigfoot coming into a ring with like sleeveless like jean vest and jeans and a bandana tied around his head, and then the fucking Abominable Snowman comes walking in a kimono.
And he's like, you know why I shave my armpits?
You're picturing a
Because it makes
kimono.
me aerodynamic when I fight.
I'm picturing the Yeti coming in with like an Eskimo jacket. And I picture Bigfoot like with like a
Like Hammer Bros.
with like a ripped up Metallica t-shirt on, and like leather jeans or something.
The Yeti comes in with a top knot,
Assless chaps.
Yeah,
hand on katana.
Trilby
I
on.
don't know where we got the Yeti to
It
have
looks
a
like
katana.
the blade doesn't even leave the scabbard, but
Look,
you
if
look at
there's-
the Yeti and it's already sliced
I don't
in
think
half.
he uses
Or
a
the
weapon.
Bigfoot.
If he exists, I don't think he uses a weapon, considering that people are saying that he kills a man with one punch. If you can do that,
Yeah.
I don't think you need a weapon of any.
He does it
sort
for
like
style
a
points. He
fist.
does it to flex.
Like Mike.
He uses a katana as a toothpick.
Is the
Weird
Yeti-
flex, but okay.
Wait a minute. If the Yeti can kill somebody with one punch, does that mean he's Mike Tyson?
Oh shit!
We should make a
Mike
Yeti.
Tyson's just chilling in the mountains to train.
That's what I said. I like pigs. Okay, well, the Himalayan villagers tell stories of Yetis abducting young girls in the night, throwing stones at villagers, and snacking on yaks. Wow. Well, Jimmy Stewart's wife smuggled a Yeti finger from A Wonderful Life, and an adventure found a Yeti hand in a sacred Himalayan tomb. He replaced one of the fingers with a human double that he got in specific for this assignment. And then in Nepalese and the U.S. governments regulate Yeti hunting. In 1959, U.S. Embassy memo stated that American citizens need a permit to start tracking a Yeti. So is that just the idea of the government, like, another thing we can get money out of? Some people that want to believe in Yeti hunting. We know there's a squad that hunts Bigfoot.
I was thinking like, oh, somebody's kidnapping young girls. Says the man who just kidnapped the young girls. You know what I mean? Like,
Like I've mentioned many times about...
That's a Scooby-Doo plot.
it was Yeti.
It was a helium balloon.
Like I mentioned many times about this, mysterious figures. I always point fingers at the kid that starts, the weird kid that when all the neighborhood pets go missing, you look at little Timmy, who is runs around with a butterfly net, even though he's 43. Okay, well, let's talk about the etymology and alternate names of the Yeti. The word Yeti is derived from Tibetan. It's a compound of words of the Tibetan era known as Wylie, which is like rocky or rocky place, and also with the Tibetan thing, which means bear. So Propaganda states that the word T, Te, and Te are derived, that's the weirdest one, T, and Te, are derived from the spoken word Tre, which means Tibetan for bear, with the R so softly pronounced as to be almost inaudible, thus making it T or Te. Other terms used by Himalayan peoples do not translate exactly the same, but refer to legendary and indigenous wildlife. Mish, which translate as a man-bear.
I mean, if you saw, like, I'm just trying to think of, like, what a Nepalese, like, or Tibetan mountain bear would look like. Like, and what if it was, like, kind of a polar bear, so style looking, but it's got the mountain build, you know, of, like, a grizzly, or not even a grizzly, like, I guess
I picture
more
a
of, like, black bear,
mix
but
of
larger.
a...
Just saying like a giant black bear,
Just-
pretty much.
But white.
Oh.
And that thing would scare the shit
Well,
out of me.
a lot
like,
of-
seeing that coming down the mountain at you, like,
Hauling ass.
yeah.
A lot of people always...
Especially if it's on two legs.
You know, a lot of people like...
Jeez Louise.
I've done a
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I've done a fill in the blank on Bigfoot before. And when we talk about Bigfoot, a lot of the misconstruings of what Bigfoot actually is that bears can stand up straight up, like
Yeah.
on their hind legs, and
Yeah.
they can walk using bipedalism, basically. Basically, they can look like a giant, like, human, basically, like a freak-sized human. So what's known if like one of these man bear type things are not out there, like
Like
it's-
Golden Compass style.
Yeah. Like if you're looking at,
Yeah.
we're not talking about the polar bear that's cracking a nice cold Coca-Cola. We're talking about like a giant like bear that might, you know how there's
He rips a jaw off in that movie,
Well,
I think.
yeah,
Actually.
he does.
He's pretty badass.
there's
Wears armor.
like
and shit.
there's
shit.
pit
I gotta
bulls
find his
with
name.
giant muscles. We know pit bulls that have giant muscles and a freak-like thing. What's hard to believe that a bear might not be super ripped like a chimp? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Chimps are ripped.
A snowman of
Well,
such quality
The
that
Dusu,
you could only describe it as abominable.
well, the
Snowman
Duzute
bear, holy-
translate as cattle, and the full meaning
York?
translate as cattle
Folkloric?
bear, referring to the
Well,
Himalayan brown bear.
Something like that.
Meagle or Migo translate as wild man, and Bunmanchi is Nepali for jungle man that is used outside of Sherpa communities where Yeti is the common name. Merka, author name for
Almost like double
wild
decker.
man, local legend holds that anyone who sees one dies or is killed. The latter is taken from a written statement by Frank Smith Sherpas in 1937.
Sounds like a White Walker too.
Nobody's seen Game of Thrones. Kang Admi is also called it the Snowman.
Well,
A
that
lot
makes
of
me
people-
think of. There's also isn't there a thing? Isn't there like a belief in like Eastern society about like something called like the Winter Shogun?
I don't know, but
I've heard something about that.
in 1937, people were trying to explore the mountains on expeditions, and the Sherpas, the guides through the mountain, would not go at a certain season and certain time of the day because they believed that this Yeti was most known to be out at that time. Where they say nocturnal, there's no traveling at night. We have to bake a campfire now. We're not traveling past when the sun goes below the mountains
Dude,
because
it's so
this is when the Yeti comes out.
Yo, for some reason, like two thoughts led into this, but like it's related. We were watching Joe Rogan, and they were showing this thing with like an eagle that would drop both a ram and a bobcat on the road from like, way up cliff high, and they just splat, shattered, bones broken, everything. And I was just thinking, like, what if that was one of its methods to like just kill or like attack or whatever, is just to like take something and just throw it the fuck off a mountain?
That's
like,
what he talks about, it throwing rocks.
Right, so what if, so just picture yourself getting picked up and just, that's the end of your life. That's the last 20 seconds of you, like, is
Like
going,
when you're
and
playing
then-
Skyrim and you go at a giant for the first time, you're just flying 400 feet in the air.
Yeah. Yes,
Dude,
exactly.
You explaining the Sherpas and their infinite wisdom not going out at a certain time of day, that's just spooky.
That's
And
just,
Right.
that
They
in
know.
itself is like, all right, let's
That
just go the
gives
fuck home.
Yeah, right.
that gets the like ooh in the pit of your stomach.
Right.
Like, sure.
You know what freaks me out is if you think of them throwing boulders, you just like, you're randomly sitting there like on the side of a mountain and just this thing drops down. You don't see it, but you hear a giant you're like, what the hell? And it's too dark for you to see.
Right.
And next thing you
You're
know,
picked up and
someone
thrown.
picks up a giant Indiana Jones boulder, you turn around and just knocks you off the side of the mountain. I think of the Grinch movie, that giant mountain.
Oh my god.
All the
Oh,
Who's
yeah.
from Whoville would be screwed if the Yeti just went down there and just started beating the crap out of everyone.
When the cop doesn't arrest the Grinch because he says sorry, so he just gets fucking impaled by a Yeti.
I've never thought of the Yeti as like spooky or scary, but like having the Yeti have like a timetable, like don't go out or the Yeti will
It's like a gremlin.
kill
you don't
your
feed
ass.
it after a certain
Yeti
time.
season.
It
Yeah,
gets the
Gremlin, don't
same
feed it around
feeling as
midnight,
like
don't get water on it or some shit.
it's the same feeling as like thinking about the Mothman or something. Just like if you get broken down in like whatever the fuck in New Jersey or whatever. No, that's the Jersey Devil. Like
Yeah.
if you get
He
if you
doesn't
break
know about that.
if you
Yeah,
break
yeah.
down in Jersey and like you get out to fix your car, you might see the Jersey Devil on your ass.
Let's save that for another legend of the
Like
mist.
that's another spooky like oh god.
Well, then there's also the whole thing, like if you wanted to go with like skinwalkers and shit.
Well,
Mhm.
Oh,
let's
dude.
talk about the term the Abominable Snowman. The name Abominable Snowman was coined in 1921, the same year Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Bury led the 1921 British Mount Everest Reconnaissance Expedition, which he chronicled in Mount Everest Reconnaissance 1921. In the book, Howard Bury includes an account of crossing a Lapka La at 21,000 feet, also 6,400 meters if you're everyone else in the world that's not the United States, where he found that footprints that he believed were probably caused by a large loping gray wolf, which in the soft snow formed double tracks, rather like those of a barefooted man. He adds that his Sherpa guides at once volunteered that the tracks must be that of the wild man of the snows, to which they gave the name Meh-Teh Kangmi. Meh-Teh translate as man-bear, and Kangmi translate as snowman.
I'm curious to see how wolf tracks translate into looking like
Super cereal.
a human foot. Like a human track.
It's like the
They're
show.
very different.
It's like the show Rocket Power, where the one was trying to make goblins and stuff, and what the person did was, if you take your fist, push it into the ground, and then take your fingers and poke 4 little holes for toes above the fist by like an inch or so, it looks like a small like foot. So they were talking about
There's that, and then you do like 3, and it looks like a little alien foot.
Yeah, so it's like it's the way maybe it was just someone messing with somebody, or maybe it was just a certain pattern from maybe the winds or the snow shifting. We don't truly know. Well, confusion exists between Howard Beery's recitation of the term Meh-Teh Kangmi and the term used in Bill Tillman's Mount Everest 1938, where Tillman had used words known as the Mech, which does not exist in the Tibetan language, and Kangmi when relating to the coining of the term Abominable Snowman. Further evidence of Mech being a missioner is provided by Tibetan language authority professor David Smelgrove from the School of Oriental and Becoming a Misnomer is provided by the African Studies of the University of London, who dismissed the word mech as impossible because the consonants tech cannot be conjoined in the Tibetan language. Documentation suggests that the term mech kangmi is derived from one source. The year 1921 it had been suggested that mech is simply a misspelling of Meh-Teh. So the idea that the dude that was trying to translate this misspelled what he wrote in his book, and it was really the word Meh-Teh. So not like that has anything to do about the beautifulness of the Abominable Snowman, but the use of the Abominable Snowman began with Henry Newman, a longtime contributor to the Statesman in Calcutta, writing under the pen name Kim, interviewed the porters of the Everest reconnaissance expedition on their return to the Darling. Newman mistranslated the word Meh-Teh as filthy, substituting the term abdominal perhaps out of artistic license. As author Bill Tillman recounts, wrote long after in a letter to the Times, the whole story seemed such a joyous creation, I sent it to 1 or 2 newspapers. So the idea that the Abominable Snowman, that wonderful name we like to think of when we compare it to the Yeti, was actually made up on accident. It was really a mistranslation of an American person trying to understand what the Tibetan Sherpas used and got the name wrong and spelled it wrong in the book, where we took the translation to mean something completely different, and someone uncovered this little mistake.
I'm still trying to picture a grizzly and a gorilla put together.
I'm trying to picture Bigfoot coming in with a nice bandana on and beating the crap out of a Yeti.
It's like, it makes me want to play Primal Rage. You ever play that game?
Oh my god.
Isn't there like a white monkey in
Yeah.
there? Yeah, or like a gorilla in
You mean
there.
Rampage?
Like, what?
Rampage?
No, Primal Rage.
That makes me think of the movie Rampage,
Rampage-
with The Rock.
Exactly. Yeah.
That giant white gorilla?
Yeah,
I haven't seen that.
dude, and the video game, which is awesome. But
Yeah,
yes,
right?
exactly. But with Primal Rage, it was a arcade game, and I think they translated it to 64 and all those others.
Yeah, I've seen it on the N64.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
how I know it.
Well, the history, in pre-19th century, according to H. Sliger, the Yeti was part of a pre-Buddhist beliefs of several Himalayan people. He told that the Lepa people worshipped a glacier being as a god of the hunt. He also reported that followers of the Bon religion once believed the blood of the Myra god, or wild man, used in certain mystical ceremonies. The being was depicted as an ape-like creature who carries a large stone as a weapon and making a whistling swoosh sound. So the idea that the Yeti now has a weapon, not like a katana, but more of a club, a giant stone, like a piece of stone, that's formed like a club.
Don't they say that like Sasquatch or Yeti, or not Yeti, but Sasquatch, will use large branches and trees and hit things?
I'm just still fascinated. If he can kill a man with one punch, why the hell is he squaring up with a weapon?
Well, I mean, a big old boulder would be a pretty good long range.
Maybe, yeah, if it's long range, like a slingshot type
You
deal.
actually have that kind of raw strength.
Think about a gorilla, dude. Those things are
So the Yeti's
so
supposed to be 4.5
powerful.
meters tall.
Scary.
Scary
Oh,
powerful.
they're tall, yeah. We're going to get to that.
Man.
In 19th century, in 1832, James Purnep's Journal of the Artistic Society of Bengal published trekker B.H. Hodgson's account of his experience in northern Nepal. His local guide spotted a tall bipedal creature covered with long dark hair, which seemed to flee in fear. Hodgson concluded that it was an orangutan. All right, we know an orangutan to have long arms and be kind of short. How do you mix up a Yeti with an orangutan?
I could see somewhere down the line.
And orangutans are actually extremely aggressive.
I mean, right. So I could see somewhere in the evolutionary chain, just like how elephants went somewhere in these territories and developed this sort of hair and thick coat or whatever and turned into mammoths. I feel and we see snow monkeys in certain Asian territories where they're chilling in the spas and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever, and they've developed different ways to handle the elements better. So I feel
I'm still just
Sizable.
picturing the giant wampa from Star Wars that tried to eat Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker.
Dude, that's
the perfect
that's
Yeti.
perfect right there. When that thing gets up, you're like,
Oh my god.
yeah.
An early record of reported footprints appeared in 1899 in Lawrence Waddell's Among the Himalayas. Waddell reported his guide description of large ape-like creatures that left the prints which Waddell thought were made by a bear. Waddell heard stories of bipedal ape-like creatures, but wrote that none, however, of many Tibetans have interrogated on this subject could ever give me an authentic case. On the most superficial investigation, it always resolved into something that somebody heard or told of. The 20th century. The frequency of reports increased during the early 20th century when Westerners began making determined attempts to scale the many mountains in the area and occasionally reported seeing odd creatures or strange tracks. See, I think the belief that when we're trying to explore, a lot before the Yeti was really, really popularly known or really, really like popularly seen, was based on the fact that we haven't been taking many expeditions into the mountains yet. We haven't been in that region because of a story of some giant creature out there guarding the mountains. Now we got Westerners coming over, and now they're starting to explore the mountains and take more expeditions. Now people are recounting more tales of seeing a type of monster. Maybe like, you know, some of the
That's
people...
still just freaky.
I
Like,
know.
like as you said the story, I found the picture of it, and then they have a
the
pickaxe.
giant footprint, yeah.
They have a pickaxe to scale for it.
Well, they were talking about, like, imagine the town folklore being like, don't go into the mountains, you're angering the Yeti, he's coming down and stealing our daughters and stuff. Like, he's coming down and stealing our children, you know?
Yeah, why just the girls?
He is because he's not gay.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Why can't the Yeti be gay? You don't know what he is.
Why's he gotta be a guy?
Why does he gotta own a ice...
It's a big
Why does
black
he
woman.
gotta own a snow cone factory like in Monsters Incorporated?
How funny it'd be like, all our
Snow
sons are being
cone!
stolen.
That Yeti was
The
sick.
abominable snow cone. Well, look, I mean, if you think, though, we're taking more trips into the mountains, and that's when now the Yeti's being seen more. But maybe the townsfolk are like, you're disturbing the Yeti, and at night he's coming down and taking our children. Can you stop? You're angering the guardian of the mountains.
I'm just imagining like a serious conversation between adults, including the sentence, "Stop! You're disturbing the Yeti." like holy
It sounds
shit.
dumb to say, but you don't like. We don't know whether it's real or not.
Well, what
real
does
or not.
man
Because,
like
like,
to
when
do?
you're
What does
talk-
man like to do?
When you're talking to like
explore,
a,
disturb, and
We like to explore, disturb, and we like to conquer things. So the Yeti is
When you're
going
talking
to
to
get
the
pissed
chief
if you're
of,
trying to
like-
conquer his mountains.
you're talking to the chief of like a Nepalese village who's like, you're pissing off the Yeti. You're like, something's coming down and taking some shit. Like
You just think it's animals, though.
you like, but
But you don't chalk
yeah,
it
you don't
up to
find
some-
out till you get fucking chucked off a mountain.
Right.
All you hear is just.
Well, in
man.
1925, N.A. Tambazi, a photographer and member of the Royal Geographical Society, writes that he saw a creature about 15,000 feet, 4,600 meters near Zemu Glacier. Tambazi later wrote he observed the creature from about 200 to 300 yards. Also 180 to 270 meters if you're anyone else in the world besides the United States, for about a minute.
It's fairly close.
Unquestionably, the figure in outline was exactly like a human being, walking upright and stomping occasionally to pull at some dwarf rhinodendron bushes. It showed up dark against the snow, and as far as I can make out, wore no clothes. About 2 hours later, Tampazi and his companions descended the mountain and saw the creature's prints described as similar in shape of those of a man, but only 6 to 7 inches long by 4 inches wide. The prints were undoubtedly those of a biped. Western
That's small,
interest
isn't it?
in the
That's
Yeti
fucking small.
peaked dramatically in the 1950s. While attempting to scale Mount Everest in 1951, Eric Shipton took photographs of a number of large prints in the snow about 6,000 meters above sea level. These photos have been subject to intense scrutiny and debate. Some argue that the best evidence of Yeti's existence, while others contend that prints are known as a mundane creature that have been distorted by the melting snow. Peter Brine reported finding a Yeti footprint in 1948 in northern Sikkim, India, near the Zemu Glacier, while on holiday from a Royal Air Force assignment in India. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay reported seeing large footprints while scaling Mount Everest. Hillary would later discount Yeti reports as unreliable. In his first autobiography, Tenzin said he believed the Yeti was a large ape, and although he had never seen it himself, his father had seen one twice. But in the second autobiography, he said he had become much more skeptical about its existence. So during the Daily Mail Snowman expedition of 1954, the mountaineering leader John Angelo Jackson made the first trek from Everest to Kanjunga, in the course of which he photographed symbolic paintings of the Yeti at Trebuchet Gamba. Jackson tracked and photographed many footprints in the snow, most of which were identifiable. However, there are many large footprints which could not be identified. These flattened footprints, like indentations, were attributed to erosion and subsequent widening of the original footprint by wind and particles. Much like I was saying, a natural causation or disturbance affecting these types of tracks, leaving very lack of evidence to the Yeti's belief. Is that just because some scientist or some guy that believes in something being logical or something that has to have some type of evidence support it, totally annihilating this folklore, much like atheists where they don't have any evidence, you can't believe in God or something? Is that the same thing with the Yeti? Since there's no circumstantial evidence, you're just hearing stories and recountings of someone else. You don't truly know.
Well, everyone themselves are going to be naturally skeptical about things that could potentially, like you always have a lot of the folklores about, like the boogeyman and all that. Like you hear that stuff like growing up, like tooth fairy and stuff. So you always hear like all this stuff that you believe to find out it's not real, like Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, the other ones I've mentioned.
Yeah.
But so it's the same mindset, I guess, going into this stuff where you have Bigfoot, Yeti, you have like Tasmanian Devil,
Loch Ness Monster.
the Loch Ness Monster, which was like we can't decide whether that's real or not either, because there's also been the fake pictures that have been made.
Right.
Whereas there's also the fake, like you can't trust anything
I feel like
unless you see it in person or have it.
the Kraken.
Yeah, they're like that.
But
there are large squids.
Yeah,
It's like,
Yeah, they did realize that there are large squids. They found like a 40-foot
There just
squid.
are colossal squids that are even bigger than giant squids. Like they exist. It's just really like squids with giant beaks and hooks on their tentacles. They exist.
Yeah.
Well,
They probably don't come up and attack ships.
Well, on the 19th of March,
all the way down
1954, the Daily Mail printed an article which described expedition teams obtaining hair specimens from what was alleged to be a Yeti scalp found in the Pangosh Monastery. The hairs were black to dark brown in color in dim light, and the fox red in sunlight. The hair was analyzed by Professor Frederick Wood Jones, an expert in human and comparative anatomy. During the study, the hairs were bleached, cut into series or sections and hairs, comparing them with hairs from known animals such as bears and orangutans. Jones concluded that the hairs were not actually from a scalp. He contended that while some animals do have a ridge of hair extending from the plate to the back, no animals have a ridge as the Pangosh scalp. So running from the base of the forehead across the pate and at the ending at the nape of the neck, Jones was unable to pinpoint exactly the animal from which the Pangosh hairs were taken. He was, however, convinced that the hairs were not of a bear or anthropoid ape. He suggested that the hairs were from a shoulder of a coarse-haired hoofed animal. So Sladmer Rovitz claimed in his book The Long Walk, published in 1956, that as he and some others were crossing the Himalayas in the winters of 1940, there was a path blocked for hours by two bipedal animals that were doing seemingly nothing but shuffling around in the snow. So now you're contributing the Yeti to not one giant creature, but maybe a race of creatures. Maybe there's like an elite team of guardians of the mountains.
Yeti
Every new little story, it's just another like it adds another mystery. Like, oh, that's
It adds
spooky.
another block onto the Jenga
Well,
tower.
it wouldn't make sense on the whole idea of like Yeti and Bigfoot being one thing. Because like we've had it for years. Of
Well, they
thinking
talk about Bigfoot. Like the fill in the blank I did on Bigfoot was talking about Bigfoot as a race, as Bigfoot being a certain type of homogeneous or whatever type of like pre-evolutionary thing that we might have came from, or another separate species, like
something that
branch.
diverged from the Neanderthals.
instead of Homo sapiens, there was something else. Like we know there's difference between there was like two species existing before they evolved. Like one's Homo sapiens, one's Neanderthals or whatever. That like kind of one were like big giant.
I guess
dumb
it would also
creatures.
depend bleh. All right, so I can't speak. So like if we started from
If we started from Neanderthals here, we could have been like, as it was evolving, there could have been something that made it like kind of like branch off.
Yeah.
So like Homo sapiens or like us today have kind of gone in one direction, whereas these ones have evolved still like wild in a sense. So they went over this way. Like so like Yetis and stuff. could just be like I guess like a group of people that just didn't evolve the same way we did, just like in their own way to survive in that. So they kind of still have their animalistic tendencies. They don't really have a true consciousness. Like we can talk and communicate. They probably have their own form of communication, like most animals do.
How would the Yeti communicate with other Yetis?
Screams.
I'm just
picturing
I was
Yeti
gonna say
scream.
grunts, screaming, and
I'm picturing like
Yeah.
banging the chest,
Yeah.
like that type of
well,
thing.
they're saying it's more like more of like a gorilla / orangutan. So they can like gorillas like communicate through like a series of like hand gestures, grunts, and stuff like that. So it could just be similar to that.
I was
Let's do
thinking,
the Lord of the Rings when they have the ring wraiths. Like you,
Or they
like
scream.
they're just screaming, but like Frodo's like their words in those screams.
oh yeah.
Imagine if the Yeti just like speaks and he's just like, "I'm Morgan Freeman." Like, oh my God, it's
Like a
Morgan.
dapper-
Freeman.
Bro,
you speak English.
Like a dapper yeti.
I was thinking, all right.
Why are you destroying my mountains?
I'm not gonna like diverge into aliens, but this did make me think of it. But like, because the Yeti in its size and what you're just talking about with like where we might have branched off from Neanderthals or whatever. I remember seeing something with like an alien where they had like a telescope of it was like the moon or something, whatever, and they showed this large what looked like bipedal shape of something, but it would have inferred that this thing was like miles taller, like something like some absurd height, right? And that's something that like got my brain thinking about like I wonder what like the largest form of life, like bipedal life, is out there. You know what I mean? Especially considering the size of this Earth.
Beginning in 1957, American Tom Slick funded a few missions to investigate Yeti reports. In 1959, supposed Yeti feces were collected by one of Slick's expedition. Feces analysis found a parasite, which could not be classified. So the United States government thought that finding the Yeti was likely enough to create 3 rules for American expeditions searching for it. Obtain a Nepalese permit, do not harm the Yeti, exempt in self-defense, and let the Nepalese government approve any news reporting on animals' discovery. In 1959, actor James Stewart, while visiting India, reportedly smuggled the so-called Pangosh hand by concealing it in his luggage when he flew from India to London. So the American and Soviet teams were also planning organized hunts during the Cold War for the Yeti. So imagine, is that because they want to see if they can capture the Yeti and possibly use it for their own military purposes?
They
against
probably
the
want to
government?
use it either for military or for
Yeah, for
research, because as humans decide to do every time they discover something, they immediately kill it and research
Or
it.
you're thinking of the other way, like, we got to hunt the Yeti because kids go into the mountains.
Cold
kids
War.
come out
Oh
to
my
the
God!
mountains.
Imagine the the cool morale boost, like landing on the moon would be like, yeah, Americans found the Yeti. What did you do, Russia?
We just yoinked the Yeti. What you got?
See, every time you spout a new like piece of information, it's like, oh yeah, there were like 2 of them guarding like a pathway. Maybe they're like a race. It's like, it adds another like drop of uncertainty. It's like, ooh, it's spooky. It's like
Then you think about like why are they standing there? Like what's behind them?
it's like one of the recent Stephen King books. Like it was about like a shapeshifter, and like the little girl was like, yeah, I saw Daddy standing in the doorway, but he had straws for eyes. And you're like, that sounds stupid.
Well, in the
Wait, what
in
would
the
that look
21st
like?
century, in
Like,
2004,
oh,
Henry
shit,
G.,
that's
editor
creepy.
of the journal
Yeah.
Nature, mentioned in the Yeti as an example of a legend deserving further study writing. The discovery that Homo floresiensis survived until so very recently in geological terms makes it more likely that stories of other mystical human-like creatures such as Yetis are founded on grains of truth. So in early December 2007, American television presenter Joshua Gates and his team, Destination Truth, reported finding a series of footprints in the Everest region of Nepal resembling descriptions of Yeti. Each of the footprints measured 33 centimeters, exactly 13 inches in length, with 5 toes that measured a total of 25 centimeters, 9.8 inches across. Casts were made of the
That's
prints
big
for
foot.
further research. The footprints were examined by Jeffrey Meldum of Idaho State University, who believed that the 2 morphologically accurate to be fake or man-made. Before changing his mind after making further investigations later in 2009, Gates made another investigation during which he discovered hair samples. A forensic analysis concluded that the hair contained an unknown DNA sequence. On the 25th of July 2008, the BBC reported the hairs collected in the remote Garo Hills area of northeast India by Dupu Mark had been analyzed at Oxford Brookes University in the UK by primatologist Anna Neckaris and microscopy expert J.K. Wells. These initial tests were inconclusive, and ape conversation expert Ian Redmond told the BBC that there was similarity between the cuticle pattern of these hairs and specimens collected by Edmund Hillary during the Himalayan expeditions in the 1950s and donated to the Oxford University Museum of Natural History. An announced planned DNA analysis, this analysis has since revealed that the hair came from the Himalayan Goral.
The what?
The Himalayan Goral. So a group of Chinese scientists and explorers in 2010 proposed to renew searches in the Shangri-La Forestry District of Hubu Province, which was the site of the expedition in the 1970s and 80s. So now in the 20th, as we are noticing in the 21st century, from a couple of years, from 2007 to 2010, people are starting to want to go back and really try and re-encounter these stories that these guys have experienced in the 1970s and 80s of searching in the mountains. But we don't know if the Yeti's even still up there. Maybe he just decided to pack his bags and leave, put all his stuff on a bindle and head out. So at a 2011 conference in Russia, participating scientists and enthusiasts declared having 95% evidence of the Yeti's existence. However, the claim was disputed later. American anthropologist and anatomist Jeffrey Meldrum, who was present during the Russian expedition, claimed the evidence found was simply an attempt by local officials to drum up publicity. This is something that you can experience when you go to Roswell, New Mexico. They have a McDonald's that is in the shape of a UFO. This whole town is literally like
capitalizing on
come
that.
on down, we got aliens. And like the street, everything is alien 24/7. There's nothing but alien memorabilia. They have shirts they sell like, I've been to Roswell and survived and didn't get abducted.
And you're going to buy a few things going there.
Yeah, because
like,
you want the sticker that's on your car that says I've been to Roswell and lived. And then they have the same thing in like in Scotland with the Nessie. With the Loch Ness Monster, you go to Lake Loch Ness. It's all it is you came to Loch Ness Water Park, and it's like all this stuff. Like ride the Nessie. It's like it's all about selling money. It's all about publicity and advertising to get people to come to your town. Like that's the whole basis on the movie Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Like Swallow Falls, it became a whole idea. Like we grow food here, come on down. Like they renamed their whole town and they published it around that. Like
that's a great movie.
It's like that whole idea. Well, let's talk about some possible identifications of the Yeti. The misidentifications, or it's possible explanations, I should say. The misidentifications of Himalayan wildlife has been proposed as an explanation for some Yeti sightings, including the chute, a langur monkey living at lower altitudes, the Tibetan blue bear, or the Himalayan brown bear as duzute, also known as the Himalayan red bear. So the idea that it might be just a giant ape or a bear. Well, I mean, throughout many years, a lot of people, it seems like, have a lot of evidence that they can make an excuse for the Yeti, and not too much has been known. Like, everyone kind of chalks it up to be a bear or some type of form of bear or type of species that just, like I was saying before with the Bigfoot, where they stand up on their hind legs and use bipedalism. They're like, what can you really clarify from what the Yeti's discovery is through the mountains? I mean, you're recounting a story from people that from a long time ago, so it's really hard to decipher what they're trying to say. Like, you can't really believe it because we just see the Yeti as this mystical being. It would be cool to have this being out there, but what do we really know if it's not just some other form of evolutionary bear or some type of thing that is just formed a different way? Because we know things adapt to their environments. What's to say this thing didn't learn to start walking on two legs to find food better and dig up plants and stuff? So the last study was the last explanation, I guess you could say, for the Yeti's existence was in 2017 by Daniel C. Taylor, published a comprehensive analysis of the century-long Yeti literature, giving added evidence to the Ursius tibetanus, an explanation building on the initial Barn Valley discoveries. Importantly, this book under the Oxford University imprint gave a meticulous explanation for the iconic Yeti footprint photographed by Eric Shipton in 1950. Also the 1972 Chronic McNeely print, as well as other unexplained Yeti footprints. To complete this explanation, Taylor also located a never-before-published photograph in the archives of the Royal Geographical Society taken in 1950 by Eric Shipton that included scratches that are clearly bare nail marks. So now in our last evidence or explanation for the Yeti, it's been chalked up to a bear. Now, I have to ask you guys this question. Do you believe that there is a Yeti out there? A type of abominable snowman?
I would say yeah, because we don't know what actually is out there.
I think it's a good type of folklore to tell, like, people back in the day, like, you tell your kids stay out of the mountains at night, don't go playing tag, so they stay and come inside, before the Yeti eats you or the Yeti, takes you away and throws you up in the mountains.
I don't believe anything.
You don't believe in Bigfoot?
I don't believe we exist. So how could I believe in Yeti or Bigfoot?
Well,
Yeti's
where have
God.
you seen where have you seen in popular culture where the Yeti is kind of depicted? Do you know anything?
Rudolph.
Yeah,
The
okay.
Bumble.
Well, in the video game, Mr. Nultz, the title character, goes through a series of levels before meeting his nemesis, Mr. Blizzard, who is a Yeti. In 2006 video game Titan Quest, Yeti appears as beast enemies in Act 3 of the Orient. And in Walt Disney World's attraction Expedition Everest at Disney's Animal Kingdom is themed around the folklore of the Yeti and features a 25-foot tall audio animatronic Yeti, which appears during the ride. Bumble, the Abominable Snowman from the 1964 Christmas television special Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And then in 2016, the Travel Channel released in the series Expedition Unknown, a special 4-part episode titled Hunt for the Yeti. So it seems like we're all kind of still chasing this myth of the Yeti and really trying to figure out, much like there's still Bigfoot location squads today and hunters that travel against Bigfoot. Who's to say that there's not a group of hunters traveling against the Yeti? I actually ordered a couple patches of folklore and myth because we always want something bigger to be out there. But the whole idea of the Kraken, the Bigfoot, the Yeti, it's all these things, Mothman. These are all types of things that give like a legend aspect to life that make it mystical and wondrous that I think we all need to believe in at some point or need to have there just so we're kind of like, yeah, but there's this cool thing.
The Yeti, there's enough reasonable doubt there for me to not just say like, yeah, it's probably not real. Like, so the more reasonable doubt with something like the Kraken, because the oceans are like most of our planet, and they're the least explored thing.
And that's the one thing that we're like, it's the same thing with Loch Ness. You can't even, like, we've explored the whole Loch Ness. It's a small, like, little lake. Well, it's not small, but compared to the ocean, it's a lot smaller.
But you also can't see shit when they were exploring it.
But also the whole fact of maybe it's moving, the Loch Ness Monster is moving around from where we're searching it, so it's just kind of avoiding it. Yeah. So cryptozoologists argue that the Yeti is the most talked about creature of the present era, and Siberia is actually getting a Yeti resort complete with a museum and hotel. Russian park is currently in development, but when you stay, a bounty is up for the grabs of the Yeti of $30,500 from the regional governor if you find the Yeti. So you get to hunt at this resort of the Yeti, do these trips. This is all like a money publicity scam. I believe people are turning the beautifulness of the mythological creature and God himself, Yeti of the mountains, into a publicity stunt to earn money. But like we said, we all need that aspect. There's going to be people that believe and there's going to be people that don't. So
one thing you can always believe in is capitalism.
Capitalism.
It'll always bleed into everything.
I want to see a fight between the Yeti and Bigfoot, and then the winner has to fight Jesus.
Himself.
Who's himself?
Or herself.
He, she, it, wumbo.
The Kraken versus Nessie. Bigfoot versus the Yeti.
Well, Nessie
and
would
then,
lose to a fucking Kraken.
I man's gift to God herself.
And then the winner has to fight Jesus. Well, anybody that wants to look up the Abominable Snowman or the Yeti, it's definitely a quick little fun little read to get you interested in what you can call some people being psychopaths still hunting for the Yeti, or they just true believers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Fill in the Blank, and stay tuned for the next episode.